Hey, what's up guys, it's Renaldo here. So this video is going to focus on a concerning omission by a mainstream media outlet, actually the biggest mainstream media outlet on African soil, Media24, aka News24. Now, we all know that if the media wants to drive a narrative, they will drive a narrative. And that is exactly what they did with a new publishing house after the Department of Basic Education opened up a bidding process for new material that is needed in the schools, specifically from grade 1 to grade 3. Now, the problem arises when News24 starts reporting on this media house, but then leaves out very important information. They leave out a vested interest that they have in this story. And to me, at least, it's a clear breach of the press code. And ultimately, as somebody that has gone through a smear campaign by mainstream media, I know what the tactics are that are in place and why they frame a story in a specific way. And I'm sorry to say, this seems to be a targeted attack on a company that received a lot of business from the Department of Basic Education. But News24 left out critical information, and I'll get into that just now. But before we do that, please be sure to subscribe to this channel. It's absolutely free. It won't cost you anything. And the overwhelming majority of you that regularly watch my content aren't subscribed. So you can fix that by just clicking the subscribe button below. All right, so let me frame this so that you can understand what I'm talking about. So on the 28th of April, News24 came out with this story saying company with no publishing history gets lion's share of 1.6 billion rand textbook tender. Now, because we live in a country where there are so much corruption and every second business is involved in some corrupt activity, this obviously piqued the interest of a lot of people. Now, specifically, they focused on Lighthouse Publishers, which was registered 3 days after the terms of reference for the foundation phase national catalogue were issued, and it has received the lion's share of approvals to publish new learning and teaching support materials for grade 1 to 3 pupils. Now, they, in this story, talk about how old the company is, the fact that the company has this shareholder and the makeup of it. They go into details as to what percentage of the tender they got. But nowhere do they actually find any faults with this publishing company. I mean, it's not against the law to be a brand new publishing company if you can provide the services. So in essence, there are some alarm bells, of course, because we live in South Africa. But ultimately, they end off by not really finding any reason why this company should not have been awarded it. I mean, it eventually comes out. I mean, the person in this article and one of the owners of the company explains all the questions that they have. As you can see, it's a very long article because they probably didn't expect the response from one of the owners, but they provide information. They say that the parent has been involved with this for decades in foundational learning. So you would think, okay, this is now where the story will kind of end, or perhaps some investigation will go ahead, which is exactly what happened. The 1.6 billion rand textbook tender scandal, now it's called a scandal, by the way. Gouws, who is the Minister for Basic Education, demands answers as industry cries foul. Now, nobody here says what industry players are crying foul. You see, the narrative is now being created. But it says that Minister Siviwe Garube says a request for a probe into the textbook tender was taken in the interest of South Africa's 13.7 million pupils. So here's another article, and it says here, the request was sparked by a News24 report about Lighthouse Publishers, which was registered 3 days after the contract specifications were issued. So News24 is acknowledging that the reason that the minister is investigating this is because of their reporting on it. So as you can also see, a very long article again telling pretty much and rehashing the same story, and you can go and read this on your own. You can just look for the headlines, and then they just continue. Then there's another story. Flags raised over tax, BEE status of publisher that won multi-million rand textbook deals. All of these things still aren't deal breakers, by the way. You know, if you own a company and you use the online portal, you can submit your tax and VAT, and then you can quickly, once again be tax compliant. So this is another incident of them telling or driving a narrative, which is something that we have seen. And once again, they've written forever on this one. But this specific one says the company is also not registered for VAT according to the Treasury document. The company's ownership arrangement, which was listed as 2/3 black woman owned, is no longer accurate. So they're going after the small technical details. And then another article by News24 saying Guarube asked Treasury to investigate possible irregularities in 285 million textbook tender. So this is once again going after Lighthouse Publishers. And once again, you can see here that they say News24 reported on Tuesday that Lighthouse Publishers Ltd was registered 3 days after the term. So they keep on hammering on the same issues, but yet they don't actually find the silver bullet. The thing that proves that this is corruption. The thing that proves that the tender process was not followed correctly. After 4 articles now, they still do not have something that actually links this company to corruption. Now, I agree that there's a lot of dodgy things from the look of it, but nothing illegal when you just look at how they are reporting on it. And then there was another article that came out and said staff at a 130-year-old publishing company that bid for textbook deal facing retrenchment. So there is now one company. I mean, if you're 130 years old and you rely on one tender, and if you don't get the tender, you close your doors, then I would say blame management because they clearly didn't do their jobs correctly. But this focused on Maskew Miller Learning, which obviously got tenders before. And the company spent 40 million rand on developing more than 1,600 submissions. And then they only got approved 471 out of the 1,600, which to me is still a very good deal. But this is now where the important omission comes in, or the vested interest. And I want you to specifically focus on this. There's another article by them that says top publishing company that bid for textbook deal facing closure. Another one. And this one is Via Africa. Via Africa, which is owned by Media24, has announced that it is winding down its operations. Now suddenly this article puts everything else into perspective, because a top publishing company that's owned by Media24, that owns News24, is now also implicated in this tender process, and then they will have to potentially face closure because they didn't get a lot of the contracts from that tender. So do you see the vested interest here? So now the question that I have is, on the previous articles, we'll go back to the first one, did they declare that there's a vested interest? Did they mention that their company or parent company also had some skin in the game with regards to this tender process? And the easy way to find out is to just control find, and then over here you can see I put in Via Africa over here, and if I press enter, nothing, not one. Well, let's try it on this one and see. Via Africa, enter, no mention. Let's try it on this one over here. Via Africa, enter, nothing. On the next one, Via Africa, enter, nothing. Let's try the second last one. Via Africa, nothing. And then let's try this one just so I can show you that it shows it. There's 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's 7. So in this article that was published on the 5th of May, And if we compare that to the first article that was published on the 28th of April, and then this one was also on the 5th of May, this one was on the 1st of May, this one was on the 28th of April, this was on the 2nd of May. So they only acknowledged this literally 7 days later. So 7 days after the first article, and then 3 days after some of the other articles, and 4 days later after another article. So this is really concerning, and I'll explain why. Now, the reason that this is concerning is because Media24 had a vested interest in this story, meaning that they aren't just neutrally reporting on a tender process, they are reporting on a tender process that they were part of, or their parent company was a part of. Surely, if you are going to report on the news, you have to declare that. And as I've stated to you, 6 of the 7 articles did not state that. And only the latest article that came out 7 days later do they actually firstly acknowledge that they also tendered on that same process, but that they own the company that tendered on that process. So how is that not a conflict of interest? How is that not something that you should have declared from the very start? And if you want to say, oh, Renaldo, you're overreacting, they didn't have to do it, well, let me help you. So this is the Press Council's website, and as you can see, I'm on the press code page, and here's the code of ethics and conduct. So this is the press code for media, mainstream media in South Africa. And if you open it and you go specifically to independence and conflicts of interest, you will see that there's something relatively interesting over here. So let's read it. Independence and conflicts of interest. The media shall not allow commercial, political, personal, or other non-professional considerations to influence reporting, and avoid conflicts of interest as well as practices that could lead readers to doubt the media's independence and professionalism. Not accept any benefit which may influence coverage. Indicate clearly when an outside organization has contributed to the cost of news gathering, and keep editorial material clearly distinct from advertising and sponsored events. 2.1 is really important in this aspect, because not allow commercial, political, or personal or other non-professional considerations to influence reporting. I think that's exactly what happened here. I mean, hear me out. So a company that's owned by Media24 has to potentially close their doors because they didn't benefit out of a tender to the tune of what they thought they were going to benefit from, because this brand new publishing house that nobody knows about has received a lot of the tenders. So I think already there that Media24 probably looked at this and went, what is going on over here? So that's already a vested interest. That's already a conflict of interest. And then not only do you write one article, but you write literally 6 articles, 7 if you include the one in which you acknowledge that Media24's own business didn't get tenders from that process. So I think that is something that should have been declared from the very first article, because you have been driving a very strong narrative against this company, which up until now might have some glaring issues, but has not done anything that you can clearly look at and say, no, they've broken the law, or this is corruption, or this is tender fraud. None of that. The narrative that you have driven is that this company is new, therefore how does it know what it's doing? You pointed to the directors, you pointed to the fact that they haven't registered for VAT and all. None of those things actually play a part in the tender process. But these are things that you have consistently focused on to try and make it look like this company is fraudulent or have breached the terms of reference for the tender. You are trying to create a narrative here, is pretty much what you are doing. And you are using one of your other companies, News24, to drive that narrative. So Media24 the Via Africa didn't get the tenders, so now News24 is pointing at the company that did get the tenders and trying to make it look as terrible as possible. Now, that is newsworthy, I'll grant you that, but you should have declared the fact that you've got a vested interest in this story, and you didn't do that on 6 occasions. On the 7th one, you did, and I only think the reason that you did that is because you wanted to tell the story of Via Africa closing its doors potentially. So why did you not declare it? Why, in my humble opinion, have you breached the press code? Because this, to me, is clearly driving a narrative. And like I said from the very start of this video, I know what mainstream media does when they create narratives and they want to get people cancelled. Ask Twatterbaas, ask AfriForum, ask Solidariteit, ask the right-leaning podcasters in this country that News24 loves to write negatively about. And yet here's another instance of it. The difference here, however, is the glaring fact that they've got a vested interest and they didn't declare it. So, what now? What should we make of this information? Well, let me know what you think in the comments below. And if there's anybody here that think that it's worthwhile taking them to the press ombudsman, then I highly recommend that they consider doing that. But I'm only talking about people that are actually written or that are mentioned in the story, because you can't take them to the press ombudsman if you're not involved. So I would highly suggest that one of the companies consider taking News24 to the press ombudsman for clearly, in my opinion, breaching the press code. But once again, this is the quality and standard of mainstream media in 2026. God help us all. And that's pretty much all I got to say. Thank you so much for tuning in. Smash the like button, share this video far and wide. Don't forget to subscribe. It's absolutely free. It won't cost you anything. However, if you'd like to contribute financially to this channel, you can do so by either giving a super thanks, and the way that you do that is clicking on the $ and choosing an amount, and thank you for that. Or you can become a member to this channel that comes with its own perks, and you can look at the perks by clicking on the join button below, and that'll be greatly appreciated. And that's all I've got to say, everybody. Till later. Cheers and peace out.
You don't even know me, but every time you see me, you say, I wear my massacre. You don't even know me, but every time you see me, you say, I wear my massacre. I wear my massacre. You don't even know me, but every time you see me, you say, I wear my massacre.